Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now, telling your friends that you have a YouTube channel where you review tech is both a good thing and a bad thing. Sometimes people want to offer you their tech products so that you can review them, and I love doing that. I love when people say, here you go, take this graphics card for the weekend, test it out and see what it can do in front of your audience. On the other hand though, sometimes you get a request to review products that might not necessarily be to your tastes. And in the case of today's one, well, I know April Fool's was yesterday, but this is no joke because today we are reviewing this, a 10-year-old MacBook Air from Apple. Let's get into it, shall we? And try and do things on this that apparently can be done, even though I'm not quite sure how to do said things. This is the MacBook Air gaming video. Can you game on a MacBook Air from 2009? Can you do anything on it? Will the battery last longer than a chocolate teapot? Nobody knows. Until about 30 seconds time. So let's get into it and check it out. So, despite releasing in mid-2009, this MacBook Air is still very easy on the eyes. The design has certainly held up over the last decade despite the various dents and scratches that now coat the exterior, and if I had to pay this machine an immediate compliment, that would be it. It can certainly still be considered thin and light, even in comparison to modern laptops. The individual keyboard key layout looks fantastic too, but I'll admit I'm purposely delaying, because I'm actually dreading using this. We had Macs in school, and I could never get on with them. So let's get this over with and boot it up. For a couple of seconds, nothing happened after I pressed the button, and this had me worried, but it suddenly coughed into life, and after what was 38 seconds to be precise, we were at the desktop. Do Apple call it a desktop? Never mind. Immediately, I noticed that Word, Excel and PowerPoint were installed, so I decided to check out the MacBook's performance in general usage, and opening each program consecutively felt very snappy. Until now, I hadn't really thought about the specs, but seeing as everything felt quite quick so far, I decided to investigate. It turns out this machine features a 2.13 GHz Core 2 Duo CPU, 2 gigs of non-upgradable DDR3 RAM, and NVIDIA GeForce 9400M graphics with 256 megabytes of VRAM. This was actually the more expensive option, coming in at around $1,800 in the US as opposed to the $1,500 model, and aside from the faster CPU, this one also has a 120 gig SSD, as opposed to the cheaper model which I believe featured a standard hard drive, though don't quote me on that. Because of this, and as I mentioned before, general browsing was quite pleasant, and doing so while typing on the aforementioned good looking and now confirmed very comfortable keyboard was okay. I say okay because while searching the web using Facebook and doing some online shopping worked fine, it was video playback that struggled. I found this fat guy with a big head on YouTube and decided to watch one of his videos. Darn adverts. This played at 480p fine, but 720p caused some stutter. Either that or I've got a severe facial twitch that I've only just discovered. As expected, all this did indeed take a toll on the battery life, which lasts about as long as a paper canoe would going over Niagara Falls. This of course meant I had to then charge it, which was easier said than done, because for some reason it took me ages to find the power connector. Turns out that that's on the bottom and magnetic, which is pretty cool. I thought for sure this would make the MacBook sit wonky on the desk, but it didn't. I also noticed that there were seemingly no ports on this thing, until that is I discovered this little contraption here. Again, I was expecting this to cause upset in terms of how this sat on the desk, but the Mac still sits flush, and this meant I could take a break from the annoying trackpad and plug in my mouse. Right, so just a quick update on battery. It actually lasted just over 2 hours of internet browsing, so that's that. 2 hours at most. If you're doing anything more intensive, you can maybe expect as little as half an hour, especially if you're playing any games. So, now it was time for the piece de resistance. As you can tell, my French is perfect. The moment you've all been waiting for. Gaming. Obviously, with a Core 2 Duo and 9400M, I wasn't expecting much, but Steam installed just fine. And after logging in, are you joking? Does support end today? What's going on? Okay, So it seems official support for this version of Mac OS ended on the 1st of January this year. When I saw the 0 days thing, I thought it meant that it ended literally today. I was still able to install a few games though. The first, and one of my favourites, is GTA 3. Despite our hardware, I hope the relatively low 1280 by 800 resolution would mean that the game would run quite well. So I cranked the settings up a little bit and jumped into the intro mission. Unfortunately, while the game felt like it was running at 60 FPS some of the time, there was far too much lag and stutter here to make this really playable. Turning the resolution down to 480p yielded a similar result, with not much of a gain in performance, though the frame rate certainly felt more consistent in some areas. Still, I wouldn't quite call this a playable experience. So with that in mind, I decided to try something more demanding, COD Modern Warfare 2. Ta-da! As you can see, it's a flawless result, if an error box and immediate crash of Steam is the result you're going for. This also happened with Metro 2033. Even if these games did start, they wouldn't be playable, but this machine was never intended for gaming, and it certainly wasn't marketed as such. Having said that, Half-Life 2 Lost Coast seemed to do okay with a mix of medium and low settings. As you can see, there was some lag and stutter, but after running the GPU stress test, the MacBook gave us a result of 36 FPS on average. This means you could play Half-Life 2 if you really wanted to, but in some of the areas in the game, the frame rate would dip way below 30. Quite severely so. There is of course a wider variety of free and paid games on the App Store, but it will be a mixed bag in terms of which ones run fine and which ones don't, just like any Mac game you might install from Steam. One thing I noticed though was after about 30 minutes of heavy usage, i.e. gaming, the mouse pad would start to give up, and any movement I made with my finger would either cause the pointer to do nothing or go blasting across my screen. Yes, the decade-old MacBook Air certainly is a quirky device, but for some reason I couldn't stop using it. And despite its faults, it seems to do quite well with everyday browsing. The way it looks also means that you could walk into any Starbucks, sit at a desk, and unless you're a hardcore Apple fan, someone might look at it and think, oh, look at them with their new MacBook. When in reality you've spent maybe no more than £100 or £150 on a machine from a decade ago. I guess something like that would only be important to you if you care what other people think of your technology, but maybe it's worth considering if any of you like to silently impress, who knows. Do you know what you could get for similar money though? A newer laptop that offers better performance, better upgradability and better usability. And one more thing, you'd never catch me using any Apple product on a daily basis. Oh, by the way, this Mac's got a good camera too. So is a 10-year-old MacBook Air worth it? Well, it totally depends on what you want it for. It still looks very sleek, very stylish, and it's easy enough to carry about with you. It weighs next to nothing, and it gives some modern laptops a good run for their money in terms of aesthetics. When it comes to actual usage though, the most important part of any PC, in my opinion, and probably the opinion of most, well, it's a mixed bag. If you want to play any games on it, chances are they're not going to run very well. Watching HD video is also hit and miss, even 720p might struggle, and anything higher than that, well, you've probably got no chance whatsoever. Even editing video, which I tried a little bit of off camera, wasn't really worth filming, because if you try and edit anything over 360p, it's just going to be a massive laggy mess. I wish I could say that I edited this whole video on it, but unfortunately that was next to impossible. General usage though, well, everything still feels very snappy. Opening Chrome on it, opening multiple applications, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, they all run very smoothly, they open up very quick, and if anyone's looking for a cheap Mac that they can take around with them for those simple sort of usages, you want to perhaps create a spreadsheet on the train, something like that on your way to work, then something like this might be ideal if you're looking particularly for that Mac operating system. I actually enjoyed my time with this MacBook. It was pretty easy to get along with. I thought it would be more difficult than that, but as I say, all you can really do on it is general browsing anyway, and for that it's pretty simple to work out. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, leave a like on it. If you didn't, leave a dislike on it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I promise we'll be back to PC related stuff next video, and hopefully I'll see you all then.